written by Vitaly. Hello, I'm from Yekaterinburg. I'm interested in history and thank you for your work. I was in St. Petersburg and saw a sign that even shocked my wife. She never believed alternative theories, but even she began to consider them. Yes, I think it's excellent evidence, indirectly or maybe even directly pointing to the date of the flood. Vitaly, here's a chart made by alternative history researchers that shows the dates of the floods. Our great-great-grandfathers' grandfathers passed down some information that reached their great-great-great-grandchildren. Why is all of this being hidden from us? So, almost 700 years ago, which is approximately around the year 1342, there was an invasion of Earth by green aliens, whose army included monkey people, octopus people, snake people, and others. This is the so-called Battle of Kurukshetra, also known as the Trojan War and the Battle of the Atlanteans. We discussed this war in a video on the channel. The Battle of Kurukshetra took place on the territory of Rusas. Then, for another 166 years, a unified world state of Earthlings existed, which resisted the alien expansion. In 1509, the unified Vedic civilization split, religions emerged and modern peoples formed from ape proto-hybrids like archaic humans, Sinanthropus, and Neanderthals. This era marks the beginning. New languages, the Tower of Babel, the biblical project's start, the Roman Empire's creation, and population shifts across Europe, the Middle East, and Rome. Then, for another 166 years, there was the restoration of civilization, the so-called Renaissance era, the creation of a new culture, and the replacement of the value system. The year 1675 Armageddon, apocalypse, the end of ancient civilization, massive nuclear bombardments, the destruction of the infrastructure of the previous civilization, the destruction of life in Siberia and Africa, the appearance of deserts, the destruction of space defense, and the air and space fleet. From this era until the 19th century, clay rained down from the sky. Another likely cause of this Armageddon was the fall of the moon into Fatih. Then, for 150 years, there was an interflood civilization, a transition to brick construction, and the cleansing of resisting regions and individual cities. Sodom and Gomorrah were located roughly in the Middle East. Some Siberian and North American cities were destroyed by powerful explosions, while others were buried under stones. We've covered the facts and evidence of these cleanups in several channel videos. The year 1812, a large-scale war, a cleanup operation involving massive armies and weapons of mass destruction. Presumably, and as the facts indicate, 1824 was the beginning of the global biblical flood. As continents sank underwater, some rose back up. The flood wave came from the Arctic Ocean. New mountain ranges appeared, volcanoes became active on the continents, and huge masses of water emerged from the depths of the earth. 1842 is probably the year the cataclysm ended and the start of a new era, a new world order in which we now exist. The empty cities have been restored and are ready for settlement. This marks the official end of the Roman Empire, the rise of the British Empire's century, and the start of official history. The transition to paid energy, the separation of Europe from Asia, Asia from Siberia, the development of Siberia, and the resettlement of deserted territories. And since the elites and other secret organizations are aware of these periods, therefore the next apocalypse, flood, or something else was supposed to happen around the early 2000s, say. That's why panic built up then and in the following years. So today we've kind of gone beyond this 150-year or 166-year period, and we're constantly expecting another apocalypse, but for some reason it never comes. Why is it unclear what has changed, and people in general don't know about past events, let alone understand why we even need to expect a nuclear Armageddon and the planetary flood that would follow? Well, this diagram actually explains the essence of this carousel, wrote Andrei Aparin. As you said in your videos, the depiction of past catastrophes is veiled in popular culture. I would like to draw your attention to this excerpt from an anime series.
So you're saying you decided to retreat? They surrounded the capital, we had to leave, there was nothing we could do. We'll burn this planet to the ground. Wait, is this a joke?
Did you watch it? Yeah, honestly, I've suspected for a long time that some Japanese cartoons are taken from some kind of ancient archives. Alternative researchers are uncovering too many coincidences about the past. Anime space opera, Space Battleship Yamato 2199 planetary bombardment by the Garmilla's Empire. The point is that as a result of regular planetary bombardments, the surface level dropped and became uninhabitable, forcing humanity to evacuate into underground cities. As we know, the Earth is also crisscrossed with underground communications and filled with settlements, and the flood was arranged in order to bury the remaining population and everything necessary for life that was on the surface. And let's note that the governor, the commander, and the soldiers have blue skin, while the natives who were destroyed are pink. They refused to submit to colonization, landed for a destructive mission. Whether they will intervene in the battle is unclear. Zernov's battles. Will the district's everyday life quietly recommend the young upstarts? State official Ugryumonov continuation. Sent. Kirill created the fist method. Did you make a video on how to tell if the Earth is flat or round? Viewers have already sent videos and photos of these reverse sun rays from the opposite side of the sunset, and this is interpreted as light from a second sun, as was shown in previous episodes. And now Kirill has found a clear example that explains that all of this is not a second sun or an unknown light source where it shouldn't be, but just a regular optical effect. This example debunks the theory of a second sun and points out that we often mistake what we wish for as reality, the real thing. We are mistaken simply because we cannot or do not want to consider other possibilities. Anomalous optical effects explained. Hans sent it from Ancient Civilization's Legacy. The 1936 magazine Technology for Youth discusses the revolutionary combined heat and power plant technology. In short, the problem of expensive electricity was due to the fact that to generate it you had to heat water steam to at least 365 degrees and then create a pressure of 200 atmospheres. At the same time, the efficiency increased so much that this steam generator unit became incredible. This method of generating energy was unavailable because under these conditions the metal would quickly become coated with scale, rust, or breakdown, and frequent replacement of parts made the unit unprofitable. And so, in 1914 the first mercury water plants appeared, and by 1933 such a unit was operating on an industrial scale at the General Electric Company station with a capacity of 20 megawatts. And everything was great. The working medium was mercury vapor, which produced 500 degrees at the required 200 atmospheres. The equipment did not oxidize or rust, and the unit took up dozens of times less space. The world was on the verge of cheap electricity, and unfortunately, as it turned out, World War II happened. After that, cheap electricity with expensive initial construction was not included in the plans for post-war recovery. But Santa wrote in the Telegram channel chat, "Didn't you get the point of those videos with the sun? I made them." This animation was made from the frames provided by Nikolai from the New Reality Telegram channel chat. He was the one filming the sun. So, in the video, it's a sequence of photos taken from the same spot on Earth at the same time of day, but on different days. I met Nikolai, who was photographing the position of the sun with his camera in a flat Earth group, and while they were trying to prove the Earth is flat, they ended up getting the opposite results. So this footage of the sun gives us an idea about two things. No one can capture any bubbling of the photosphere with any filters. Therefore, it's impossible to know how fast magnetic storms move there or if they exist at all. And except for in the graphic installations of space agencies, we can't see this. The second circular daily movement of the spots tells us that the Earth actually rotates around its axis during the day, and then the spots return to the same place at the same time the next day, with a slight shift. And if we watch the animation of the frames by days, taken once a day at the same time, then we see how the spots move in one direction, which can only be interpreted as the rotation of the sun itself and the speed of its rotation around its axis. It's much slower than Earth's rotation speed, so the object is much larger than Earth. And since the sun moves across the sky, we see that the spots belong to it. They drift by like clouds, but over the course of a week, maybe months, they gradually disappear and others appear. As unfortunate as it may be for supporters of the flat Earth, this footage clearly shows that the Sun rotates around its axis like a sphere, but much more slowly, and that the Earth also rotates in relation to the Sun over the course of a day. That is, exactly in accordance with the heliocentric structure of the solar system. Well, now, flat Earth supporters have to explain how. In the flat Earth model, sunspots can move in a circle during the day and return to the same point the next day, but with a slight shift, gradually moving from left to right day by day. Why does this need to be explained? Because it's a fact that anyone armed with a camera and a dark filter can observe day after day, every month and all year round. It's similar to how the traces of the flood are always available for study. Nikolai, a participant in the new reality chat on the Telegram channel, constantly photographs the sun as well as the moon, and in this way provides us with very valuable information. On the night of September 7th to 8th, a lunar eclipse occurred, which he recorded. I also observed how all of this happened. At the beginning, around 5 p.m., the eclipse started from left to right. So here I wanted to draw attention to this position of the moon, these spots. I call them the woman with the yoke, the head, the legs. Roughly speaking, the position is about 30 degrees like this. The Earth's shadow moved from left to right, and here we can see how we jump over the hour. Then it literally stopped for several hours. I also observed this crescent. It was already 7 post-meridium, 2 hours had passed. Then the moon started to open up pretty quickly, meaning the Earth's shadow moved over here to the right, and that was already at 8 post-meridium. We can already see that this position, the position of the moon, if it was 30 degrees now, it became about 40 to 45 degrees. In relation to this line, so literally in an hour, the moon rotated about 10 degrees next, we jump ahead to 2 a.m. And what do we see here? The moon is now turned like this. If it was tilted about 30 degrees like this initially, now we see that it's turned like this, almost from its original position. At 5 p.m., 90 degrees would be like this, like this, like this. It will be about 110 degrees. So on that day, Nikolai recorded the moon's rotation of 110 degrees in just a few hours. As we can see, it's 2 hours 13 minutes and 2 hours 52 minutes. So, in just over 40 minutes, we can see that the moon's rotation continued. It kept spinning in this direction, since Nikolai didn't record any further. Maybe it rotated by 120 degrees instead of 110, which is exactly what needed to be proven. At the same time, I'm sure that the moon's 110-degree tilt wasn't the result of Nikolai being drunk by that time. I'm sure he kept the camera perfectly level and even filmed some planets. I've been constantly observing the moon over the years whenever there's a full moon and it's visible, and it's quite rare. Such turns do happen, but they occur completely unpredictably according to science. If we look over the course of a month, this turn can happen. 5. What is 5 degrees? That's just this value. Well, approximately. The moon fluctuates back and forth like this once a month. Astronomers and 8 billion people don't see this. Only a few rare individuals do. A few people wrote to me in the chat a couple of times, and that's it. If the moon is a material object, and if it turns 110 degrees in a few hours, the centrifugal force could destroy the moon. So it was standing still, then suddenly turned, and then a few hours later turned back again. If it's a small or non-material object, then there are no problems, or maybe it's a space station made not of soil at all, but of a metal frame. Well, there was a theory that it could even withstand a hit from nuclear warheads of incredibly huge power. Those flashes we see, what could have caused those flashes? Clearly a bombardment with some very powerful weapon, even if the moon isn't that huge in size. Either way, that strike is incredible. And if this strike did happen, even if it was by a meteorite of such power, the frame didn't bend, nothing broke off, nothing was damaged, the moon wasn't destroyed, even though such an explosion would be comparable to the size of the moon to destroy it. I wanted to draw attention to this mystery, which remains unsolved and unnoticed. And thanks to Nikolai for his monitoring of the celestial sphere, wrote Eric. Metapod with passengers filmed in El Escorial, Madrid, Spain in 2015. Yes, these slowly levitating metapods are often filmed. It seems to be some kind of hermetically sealed capsule for one passenger with anti-gravity propulsion. Either it's a kind of sightseeing tour, or it's fieldwork for observing barragans or scouting the area. What conclusion can we draw from this? Only one. It would be great to have something like this for personal use. Here's another video about eternal batteries with red mercury that are still working. This video is from 2020. They were produced and used both in Hitler's Germany and in the Soviet Union. This one was made in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. It says red mercury in Sverdlovsk, the model and other details 1988, and there's a mistake in the inscription Sverdlovsk Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, ITE. And the battery's condition, like new, makes you think it's from modern China and is being passed off as a 40-year-old Union of Soviet Socialist Republics product. Judging by how the blade heats up, the battery puts out about 3.5 volts and 50 to 100 amps, which is around 300 watts. That's enough to power a tube radio, provide lighting, heat up food, and so on. There are quite a few videos like this, but in these experiments, no one tried shorting the contacts with a thicker wire. It's possible the output power is much higher. Here's another interesting effect. Red mercury not only doesn't reflect in a mirror, but it also has properties that can stop clocks. This is a non-magnetic effect. Non-magnetic materials are used there. One could assume incredible things, local changes in the flow of time, or some unknown effect on substances that official science doesn't know about. The German device of a similar battery is analogous to the Soviet one and was produced in the mid-1920s. This suggests that this technology came to the Soviet Union after the plundering of German scientific achievements. And here is a similar device produced in India, that is red mercury, which was used everywhere in a wide variety of devices and possibly is still used today. It has absolutely incredible properties. I assume that this substance is transitional between the subtle, that is the etheric, and the material world. The author of several videos on the Zheleznodorozhny channel sent this information. A high-yield nuclear explosion generates a microwave pulse that affects our brain like vodka, causing a drunken effect and neuron death, after which a person becomes less intelligent, with only large neural connections remaining. In other words, the smart ones die and everyone becomes socket idiots. I remember there were such conversations in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics saying that Lenin was smart because he had a powerful cerebral cortex, but this thickening is actually socket idiocy. In a democracy, they aim to elect representatives with well-developed cerebral cortexes. By the way, yes, there is information that the internecine wars of the previous human civilization were fought with plasma weapons. The remnants of that technology can be seen in the numerous cannons from that history. They actually fired plasma, and the cannonballs were used as a breech block. Such use was due to the fact that this weapon, although it could pulverize matter, did not destroy spiritual potential, which was the main value of that previous civilization. Such destruction of a person was equivalent to cremating the deceased on a pyre, and a person could quickly reincarnate without losing their evolutionary gains. Modern burial of a corpse in the ground freezes this process for decades, preventing the soul from separating from the decaying body, while mummification completely suspends reincarnation for an indefinite period. That's why the civilization of the invaders used nuclear weapons against Earth's civilization, since it was very difficult for them to fight against the gods of Yav who lived on Earth. And a nuclear explosion tears the fabric of the universe and destroys not only the body, but also resets the spiritual potential, meaning everything the soul has accumulated over the entire course of evolution. Then, the soul of the god won't be reborn by divine power, but will incarnate in a human body lacking those evolutionary gains. From this, we can conclude that the microwave radiation that has filled the surrounding space is cellular communication. Other types of radiation effectively reduce each person's evolutionary potential during their lifetime. So, send your artifacts with supporting materials to the email address listed below the video.